I'd like to talk about the electoral system, the political parties, and the civil society in Mexico. So beginning with the elections, to win the presidency of Mexico, a candidate must get a plurality of the vote. This doesn't need to be over 50% of the vote. This just has to be the most votes. Now, when there was PRI rule in Mexico from around 1929 to when this program ended in 1988, there's this process of El Dedazo, which meant that the current president would pick the next person that would run under the PRI label in the election. And since the PRI controlled or won a lot of presidential elections in this time period, effectively that person would become the next president of Mexico. And also, following that process, party primaries for the president began to become popular. The 1988 presidential election in Mexico, a lot of people thought was fraudulent, or there were a lot of issues with it. So the National Electoral Institute was created, which tried to create more free and fair elections. And also around this time, a lot of government-owned businesses were sold off. There's a lot of privatization in Mexico, which allowed the government to not be able to give high offices in companies to supporters anymore, as private individuals own these companies and could pick who they want to run them and work for them. For the legislature in Mexico, there are two houses. The lower house, the Chamber of Deputies, has 500 members. 300 of these seats are elected by single-member district, which would be each individual person member of the Chamber of Deputies would run in a small district of roughly equal size over Mexico. The person with the most votes in that election would win. And then there are 200 seats which are proportional representation, which means across Mexico, voters pick which political party they would prefer in the election, and those 200 seats are split off based on the percentage of votes that the political parties got across the country. The upper house is the Senate. There are 128 senators. 64 are single-member district, meaning the top two vote getting, the top two senators in the party with the party which wins in each state has two senators, and so the winning party will get gets two senators from each state. The second place party, however, will also get one senator from each state, and then the last 32 senators, which have not been given out through the state election processes, are decided based on proportional representation, similar to the proportional representation for the Chamber of Deputies. Looking at the political parties, there are four main ones in Mexico. There's the PRI, which was created in 1929, controlled government from creation until 2000, and then controlled the presidency from 2012 to 2018. It doesn't really have a political affiliation. It kind of just changed to support whatever was popular. It used to be more for the poor people, then it became more free market. So it just has changed a lot. The PAN, on the other hand, was created in 1939, controlled government from 2000 to 2012. It's more of what you'd consider a right-leaning party. It supports the Catholic Church. It's pro-business, free market. The Catholic Church is a large religious denomination in Mexico. And a lot of those people think of as the right economy and those processes they believe in. However, during the rule of the PAN in Mexico, there's a lot of conflict with the drug cartels. 200,000 people died and there are 20,000 disappearances. Just something which is noted of the PAN governance from 2000 to 2012 in Mexico. Another political party is the PRD in Mexico. It was created in the 1980s. It opposes the free market. It supports social policies for workers and the poor. It hasn't ever won the presidency, and it's kind of broken away. It's not as strong as it used to be, because part of the group that split apart from it is Morena, which was created in 2016. It currently controls the government. The president, AMLO, is from this party. What the party tried to focus on in its first election was the policy failures of presidents since 2000. So the one term of the PRI rule, the two terms of the PAN rule, trying to focus on those failures. and that's mainly what they ran on. It's what people think of as a left party, the same with the PRD. And there will probably be more decisions in the upcoming presidential election, more policy which is laid out in the upcoming presidential election, which takes place next year. So, looking at the interest groups and social movements in Mexico, corporatism early on took place in Mexico, where the government would create an organization for each group, which was like the official organization advocating for those types of peoples. Then pluralism started to grow in Mexico more recently, where there was to be citizens making groups to represent themselves rather than the government having a group that they make to represent the people, or and all the different types of people and interests in the country. In the 1980s, the Zapatistas were created. It started to grow. It was mostly an organization from the left. It had a small skirmish with the Mexican government in 1993 until NAFTA was created. And NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, took a hit towards indigenous people. And this is really in southern Mexico in the Chiapas region. Ejido rights were to be taken away. Ejido rights are basically the right to farm on communal lands. NAFTA required communal lands to become privately owned by someone, and that would take a lot of the revenue which could happen with subsistence farming away, which is what a lot of natives, which are mostly Mayan people in the Chiapas region, relied on to survive. So if that farming was taken away, a lot of their livelihood would be taken away. So Chiapas began to be controlled in January 1st, 1994, when NAFTA took place. The Zapatistas controlled this region for around 2 weeks until a couple thousand, maybe I think 10,000 Mexican soldiers came into Chiapas, retook some of the cities. Zapatistas went back to the jungles where they were created, or where they hid their hideouts. And this really was to help further the cause. So around 2,000 rebels who took control of the Chiapas region, and that was pretty large. However, as time went on, there were more agreements to try to solve their issues with the Mexican government. In 2000, after the PAN won the election, there were a lot of more indigenous, what the indigenous wanted, Chiapas was given out, and there was agreements to solve this conflict. However, the Mexican legislature never came up with an ultimate solution, or not just a solution, but passed a solution in the legislature. However, there has not been a lot of attacks in the Chiapas region for at least the last 6 to 7 years. It's been relatively calm, no large-scale attacks.